Can you trust your brain? Probably your answer is yes, but I don't know if you have think about that. In this presentation, I'm going to try to explain how the brain develops, how the brain works, and why we can't trust our brain every time, every single time, all the times. Because we have many problems that we have to solve before we can trust the decision that our brain make. So I hope you enjoy the presentation and you can use what you are going to learn in it.
Arratsaldeon, muy buenas tardes, good afternoon. Bueno, estamos en la antepenúltima sesión de Jakin-mina. Os recuerdo que las dos últimas serán el 10 de febrero y el 3 de marzo. Y hoy nos acompaña pues Manuel Murie, que es jefe del Departamento de Neurología de la Clínica San Miguel y profesor de Medicina en la Universidad Pública de Navarra. Ya sabéis que es una carrera que lleva pocos años implantada y que, bueno, pues yo al menos como secretario general de la universidad, para mí es un lujo el haber logrado fichar a alguien como él para nuestro claustro universitario. Bueno, él nació en Madrid, pues vino a estudiar precisamente medicina a Pamplona, a la Universidad de Navarra, aquí se licenció, luego hizo la especialidad de neurología en el Departamento de Neurología de la Clínica Universidad de Navarra y pues también es doctor en medicina y como bueno, pues hoy nos ilustrará en su conferencia, pues ha centrado sus estudios en el área de la neurorehabilitación. Tuvo una beca de posgrado de Caja Madrid para hacer un fellowship en neurorehabilitación en la Universidad de Western Ontario, en Canadá. Bueno, tiene una productividad que a mí me admira muchísimo, sobre todo una productividad en forma de trabajos científicos, de doctrina, me admira muchísimo porque, bueno, pues el gran mérito que tiene quien se dedica pues, al ejercicio práctico de la medicina es que además saca tiempo para investigar y de qué manera, ¿no? Entonces, pues tiene más de 60 capítulos de libros, publicaciones nacionales, internacionales, pues en estos dos campos, ¿no? Neurología y neurorehabilitación. Como he dicho, pues actualmente trabaja en la Clínica San Miguel como director del Departamento de Neurología, también en la Unidad de Daño Cerebral del Hospital Ciudad de Telde y fue también presidente de la Sociedad Española de Neurorehabilitación, también responsable del Grupo de Interés de Neurólogos Jóvenes dentro de la Sociedad Mundial de Neurorehabilitación, con lo cual, bueno, como veis, pues tiene un currículum pues muy importante. Y ojalá de aquí salgáis algún futuro o futura estudiante de la carrera de medicina de la UPNA, entonces tendréis la fortuna de que sea también vuestro profesor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for this kindly introduction. I want to introduce myself. I am a neurologist and my main focus is to work in neurorehabilitation because I don't know if you know that, but the brains can recover after a damage. So, and that's my file, but this is not the topic of today. Today we are going to talk about if you can trust your brain. So the first thing is, I am going to ask you this question. Can you trust your brain? Who say yes? Raise your hand, those of you who think that you can trust your brain. So all of you think that you cannot trust your brain? No. So you say yes? Who say yes? Who say, I can't trust my brain? Nobody. So all of you think that you can't trust your brain. So that's what we are going to try to answer in this presentation, okay? So the first thing is, if I told you that the use of this thing can kill you, will you use it? No. So many people is not really, he doesn't think about this sentence because do you know You know that the cigarettes can kill you, and many people use it, right? So it's brain, or because you can choose to smoke or not. And if I told you that these two orange points are the same size, you will say yes or no? Yes, right? And if I told you that this gray is the same color that this gray, you will say yes or no? Why? Yeah, because there are something here who can miss your interpretation, right? And if you put a black part inside, you will see that this is gray, the same gray. So this is what we are going to think about during this presentation, okay? But the first thing that we need to know is how our brains develops. Then we will talk about how our brains works, and finally we will see some examples of if we can trust our brain. So the brain is totally different to all the different parts of our body. If you see here, our brain is not really developed until 25 years after our born. But the head, the arms, the eyes, the legs, everything is done in the first year. I mean, this hand, after 1 year, it only can increase the size, but I have the movement. But that is not the same with your brain. In fact, even if I ask you, what do you think about money? What do you think? You don't have the real answer because you haven't developed all your brain right now. You only have 15, 16 years old. And even with 40, 50 years old, you can develop your brain. And even if you have a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, you can redevelop your brain. So probably you think that you will know everything, but that's not the truth. And you think that you have all the arguments for this conversation, but you only have your arguments. And what do you think about that? You don't have everything in your brain, okay? So this is very important because usually when we try to analyze the brain, we think about these times. For example, if you have a stroke, people think that you have to recover after a stroke in 6 months. But you need 25 years to build your brain, so it doesn't make sense to ask people recover after 1 year after stroke, because the brain needs time. You understand? Okay, so, and how it develops? It becomes here, is where we have the breathing system and the heart rate, and then it comes from here to here. This is the frontal part of the brain, and is the part of the brain that makes us very different than other animals. All the animals have this part, which is the visual process of the brain. It's almost the same. If you put a dog to watch a cat, he will see a cat, the same as you. But he can't understand, because he doesn't have the frontal lobe developed, what the cat can do or what cannot do. And this progress is what it takes almost 25 years. So we have like a window for every single part of our system to develop. It doesn't make sense to explain to a 1-year-old baby what is the meaning of a word, because he doesn't has developed the language system. You understand that? So it's the same. If I want to explain very complex cognitive function to a 5-year-old baby, he's not going to understand. And sometimes that happens. For example, I am a soccer coach, and if I have to train kids of 6 or 7 years old, I can't explain that he has to pass the ball to the other side because the opponent is going to be there, because he only thinks about the ball and going through the ball, because his brain is not prepared for the next step. So we work in steps. And how we can do that? Because we have neurons, and if you see when we, at birth, we have this kind of neurons, and then it increases the size of the neurons, the number of the neurons, and the length of the neurons, and after that we have trillions of connections in the brain. But we are going to make our connections. My connections is not the same as your connections, because my experience make my own connections, okay? And how I can make the connections? With experience and repetitions. That's the key of the brain. The brain is experience dependent and repetition dependent. Probably you are recognized in this picture. When you have a baby, everyone raises the hands and the baby raises the hands. Why? He doesn't understand what that's the meaning, but he is watching people doing the same. And that's how the brain works. But and that leads us to this key point. Our brain development depends on where we are born, because if we were born in China, we will know exactly what this means. Because our brains is the same in China and here. But our experience, our real life, develops our brains for the Chinese language, or the Russian, or the Arabic, or our language. So experience is very important. So if I have, we will see later, if I have a bad experience with a dog, the next time I will see a dog, I will be aware. But if my dog is very kindly, the next time I see a big dog, I will give my hand to the dog. Why? Because it's my experience. So this is a key point. We can't, if I want to think in how can I help you, I have to think in your experience, not in my experience. Okay? So if we can say this, our brain is like ways to connect from one place to another, from our brain connections, and at the beginning we are like horses in the ways. Then once we start to grow, we have in the same way that we have horses, cars, and everything, and our brain trying to do it more effective and more efficacy. And at the end, we have highways, and we know that in this highway, we only can go through this way, and in the other one, we can go here. And if we want to learn something new, we have to build a new highway for that specific activity. Okay? So that's exactly how our brains do. We make very new connections, and then we have to delete, to take away those connections that are not useful for that activity, and maintain only the connections that are helpful for us and for our activity. And that's why we need time. And the first year we have the virtual cortex, the visual cortex, and the auditory cortex, and then we have the temporal lobe for language, and at the end, the frontal lobe. So we are going to train our brain. So here you have to not read what is written. You have to say the color. Who want to try? You. Yeah. So here you will say green, red, what? Green, black, purple. So that's, our brain is not prepared to say the color. Our brain is prepared to read the word. So we can train our brain, and if you start to do this, for a long period of time, you will have a very fast learn. Probably in 1 hour you can read this very quick. But then you will have a consolidation, and after that you will need much more practice to become better doing this. So we have the ability, and we need minutes to rise a learning curve. But imagine that this is not the exercise, and the exercise is to learn how to play piano. You will need months or years to improve your skills. And what are we doing in our brain? We are creating new connections, and then we are fixing those connections that we want, and that is effective for us. Okay? After that, after this training, we only can increase our ability, but very slow. But the good thing is that once we have this fixed in our brain, we cannot forget it. For example, all of you know how to ride a bicycle. You will always know how to ride a bicycle. You will never forget how to ride a bicycle if you don't have a brain problem. Okay? And the next time that you will want to, for example, ride a monocycle, which is almost the same, you will use your knowledge of the bicycle to try to do the monocycle. Okay? And we can do that because we have what we call long-term depression and long-term potentiation. That means that those neurons that we are not going to use, we are going to throw it, and we are going to preserve those that are more effective for the brain. So, if we want to learn piano, we are going to use our motor and sensory areas of the brain. At the beginning, we have very low capacity to play the piano. Then the representation of the hand in our brain is going to increase because we are going to make very big connections, and the ability to play the piano is going to increase. But at the end, we will preserve or even increase the capacity to play the piano, and the area of the hand is going to decrease again. Because you have the ability. Once you have the ability, that is enough for you. And I don't know if you play the piano, but if you have been playing the piano for 10 years, you reach the piano and your hands go straight. You don't have to think what I'm going to do with my hands. Okay? And this is how our brains develops. But how our brains works, it's very simple. We have an input, and our brains works, and we reach an output. That is not as simple, but it's how it works. And how it works, this is the key point of the talk. Every single moment of our life has huge amount of information. For example, when you came here, you will see 1,000 people. Do you remember all of them? You have crossed with 500 cars. Do you remember which kind of cars are? No. And here you have information about the sound of my voice. You have information about the weather. You have information about the lights of the screen. You even can think, if you look to my face, how is my mood now? And I can see if you are interested in my talk or not, just seeing your face. And you have your own information about if you have lunch or not, and if you have rest or not. But you don't need all this information or your brain don't need all this information to make your output. So it has to take the information of this that your brain things or you think that it's important for you. That means that you are going to lose thousands, millions of information every day. But if not, our brains can't work. You understand that? So that means that if you think that the important thing is this, you are only going to be focused in this. And if you are lucky and the important thing is this, you are lucky. But if you are focusing here and the important thing is here, you are not lucky. And usually, you and I are not very good focusing the important things. So our output, the output of our brains is the input that needs an input reduction. It's always pass a filter of personal and cultural experience and contextual experience. And I'm going to show you this. So our input reduction needs to eliminate, to transform, and to generalize. I'm going to show you a video, okay?
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is the amazing colour-changing card trick.
So, have you catch the trick of the change of the color of the card? No. And have you noticed something else? He changed the clothes. Yeah, exactly. But it's not only changed the clothes. He has changed the clothes. She has changed the clothes. The back color has changed, and the table has changed. And if not, if you don't believe me, let's continue.
Hi, I'm Richard, this is Sarah, and we're going to perform the amazing colour-changing card trick with this blue-backed deck of cards. Now the idea is very simple. I'm just going to spread the cards in front of Sarah and ask her to push any card towards the camera.
Right, okay, let's see. I'm going to go for this card here.
Okay. Now Sarah could have selected any card at all from the deck, but she selected the card which is now face down on the table. And what I'm going to ask her to do is show us which card she selected.
Right, so the card that I chose was in fact the 3 of diamonds.
The 3 of diamonds, okay, an excellent choice. That card goes back into the deck. Now I'm just going to spread the cards face up on the table, do a little click of the fingers, and you'll see that Sarah's card here has now got a blue back. Not particularly surprising. What's slightly more surprising is all of the other cards have got red backs. And that is...
So, this is because your brain has been focused on what the magician wants. And that's how we react. It's normal not to, because you are focusing, or your brain is focused in the magic trick, or in the card. And that happens exactly all around our day. If I am focusing in the car that I have in front, I will remember the mark of which car it is, if it goes fast or not slow. I remember everything. But if it doesn't mean nothing for my focus, I'm not going to record any information. Okay? So and we need to do that, because if not, our brain, and in fact there are some people who has brain problems that they cannot focus in nothing, and they have to use all the information. Of course, they catch all the magician tricks, but it's not useful for their life. So we have to focus and we have to eliminate information. This is a problem because sometimes when we decide to focus on something, as I told you, our brain throws the other information. And if we focus, if we have an exam and we fail the exam, we could say, well, our focus could be, the teacher is not good, the exam is very difficult, I don't have time for the exam. You are not focusing the real problem. The real problem is that you don't know and you have failed the exam. So you have to focus why. Because if you have not studied, or if you have not slept that day, or whatever is the problem, if you don't detect it, next time you are not going to change your path. You understand what I mean? So it's very important to focus in the real problem, to make the good decisions for the real solutions. Then we also use the transformation, because we need to use patterns. The brain needs to use patterns. I'm going to show you an example. Let's hear this.
The sounds as they appear to you are not only different from those that are really present, but they sometimes behave so strangely as to seem quite impossible. But they sometimes behave so strangely, they sometimes behave so strangely, 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 so strangely, so strangely, so strangely, so strangely.
So, how many of you have heard this like a song? Some of you. Now, I'm going to repeat it, and let's try to figure if the same sentence is a song or not.
The sounds as they appear to you are not only different from those that are really present, but they sometimes behave so strangely as to seem quite impossible.
Now you have here like a song. That's because our brain, if we repeat many times, it thinks that it's important and try to think how we can preserve it. And it's easier if it's a song. So our brain has transformed a sentence into a song. And you will never hear this like a sentence. You will always hear like a song. So, and that's how our brain normally reacts. Many times we think as a person, for example, we will see later, think about any sport, I don't know, I have the picture of Nadal. We think that Nadal is a very good tennis player, but we also think that he's a gentleman, he's very nicey, but we only know that he plays really good tennis. But it transformed what we see in something that is easier for us. Or, for example, well, I'm not, if this is exactly true, you think that your teachers are And your teachers are like you, with his problems, with his difficulties, and the same. But you are, or we think that he always is a teacher, and he always is good, and but he also has problems. But our brain thinks the teacher is the teacher. Okay? And for this, we use, and the people use, words that is never, never true. Nothing is always true. Nothing is never true. Nothing is every time. No one. That usually doesn't work. But these words reaffirm. If you hear, I don't know, Canadians are stupid. Yeah, you probably know one Canadian stupid, but you can't say that Canadians are stupid. And that's something that we use. People who support Real Madrid or whatever, or people who don't like dogs or whatever, or we usually do that because it's easier to our brain. Okay? And this is the halo effect, is what I told you about Nadal. Is when one trait of a person or thing used to make an overall, and we think that African people is not happy, or we think that Germans are very, has his brain very straight, and that's not true. And then we try to generalize. Here probably you will see one face, but in reality there are two faces. But our brains thinks that it's one face. We have to focus, or here you think that this is the hand of the baby, and of course it's very big, and it's not the hand of the baby. Or if we see the head of a dog, we think that after the head there is a dog, but we are not seeing the dog. We only see the head. We try to generalize. So we have explained this, and then our personal experience. As I told you, if we have been bitten by a dog, we probably are not very friendly with dogs. Or imagine to be Busquets, who in the next penalty after failing this one. Oh, that's very tricky. Our personal experience create our personal brain output. And cultural experiments, for example, you will never think that we have to, I don't know how to say in English, to treat the cows like this. But in India, cows are sacred, and they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, and no matter, nobody can do nothing. Or there are some people that can't not eat bacon. And we think that this is normal, but it's not normal. It's not normal to have bulls running in the street. But our experience, our cultural experience, say that, well, it's not normal, but it's not bad. It's something that we use 10 days per year in my city. But this is not normal. Okay? Of course, contextual experience, probably you don't know, but I think I will say 10 to 12 years ago, we used these telephones in the streets. And this is the first plane. I don't know if you will go up. And I know some doctors that is in the clinics, they said, you can't smoke, and he's smoking. And this happens 10 years ago. So the contextual experience is also what mark our brains to give the output. And with all of this, the input reduction, the personal experience, the cultural experience, and the contextual experience, we create our output. And we not only create our output, we think that we are incredible, and we create future predictions. For example, and we are the only animals who can do that. For example, I am able, with my experience, to build in my brain what is going to happen. Or for example, when I'm preparing this talk, I am thinking what they want to hear. How can I bring them into my talk? And I think, you know, they have 15 years old, probably they are interested in some videos, and I can create future predictions with my experience, because I don't know you, with my cultural experience and contextual experience about what do you think about the brain. And this is very good, but it could be very, very bad. And I explain why. If you think, for example, that I am good in mathematics and I'm going to have good marks in mathematics, probably you will have good math in mathematics. But if you think I am not very good, I am bad, he's joking about me, he's talking about me, your brain will go down. And there are many people who cannot stop that future predictions. And this is the key point of many, many problems, especially mental health problems, that we create future predictions about what people are thinking of me, about what do they think about this, whatever. So for this, it's important to try to be calm with this, that knowing all that we have talked now, until this moment, think, okay, I have this problem, what happened, we call this the rule of 10. What happened with this in 10 minutes, in 10 months, and in 10 years? For example, I'm not sure if I have to go to this birthday. Your brain starts to think about, okay, if I have the experience that if I don't know, he's going to be bad with me next year because I haven't gone to his birthday. And okay, what happens if I don't go in 10 minutes? Probably it's bad. In 10 months, probably nobody remember about that. In 10 years, forget it. Nobody's remembering what if you don't go to the birthday 10 years ago. Do you understand what I mean? So your brain can be very good doing future predictions, but it also could be very bad for you. Okay? And if you notice what we had told before, if you start to create new connections and you think that, or your brain think that this is the very good connections because it's the more effective, they are going to preserve it. So you always be in the same thought. Okay? So now I want to try to do an experiment, and I don't know if 10 people can go out for a minute. Can go out. 10. The 10 of you can go out, please. For just 10 or 15. I don't care. And we will call you to come back. It's gonna be 1 minute, no more, eh? Okay, so if you go to the cinema and you want to buy popcorns, you have these two options. You will buy small for 3 euros or large for 7 euros. Which one would you will choose? Small. Okay. But mainly small. Can you tell them to enter, please? Okay, so thank you. And I'm going to ask you a question. You are going to go to the cinema and you have to buy popcorns, and you have these three options: small for €3, medium for €6.50, and large for €7. Which one you will choose? Medium, small, large? Okay, so previously I will ask the same question, only doing this: small, 3, and large, 7. And usually people here say 3, the small one, and here usually people say 7. And that's because your brain thought that just 50 cents, it should be better for me. And I only add information because you are not focusing on what you really need. That is, I'm going to eat all the popcorns, or I need. You think that you are saving money using this one. And it's only information. Eh?
Your brain is constantly making calls about what's right and what's wrong. And though you may not think twice about these everyday moral decisions, the calculations behind them can be pretty complicated, as you're about to see in this next experiment. Imagine you're walking through the park one afternoon. When you see someone fall down, would you lend a hand? We've enlisted the help of an actress and set up a hidden camera experiment to see what strangers will do in this exact scenario.
What do you think? People will give a hand or not? Always. Always, of course. I agree with you. But let's see what happens.
How do you think people will react once our actress hits the pavement?
I think she may have hurt herself.
That didn't take long. Within seconds, a crowd quickly gathers around, ready and willing to help. We run the experiment over and over. And every time, people responded to help her up in less than 10 seconds.
You okay? I'm okay.
It seems people will lend a helping hand to someone lying on the ground. It makes you feel good about humanity, right? But is there anything we can do to make passers-by turn a blind eye to the same person? What happens when we change nothing but the way our actress looks? Would you help someone up who looks so down and out? How will people react now? How long will it take for someone to help? "30 seconds have gone by, and no one has come close to helping. They just keep walking. More than a minute has passed, and no one has helped. She's been on the ground for 15 minutes. Before you judge any of these people too harshly, ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? It seems people's brains are having a hard time seeing.
And this is something that happened. And you don't say that you are not going to be as these ones. Because, yeah, but if you spend 16 minutes, you know how he falls. I agree with you, but the thing is that the person is even worse because you think that she's sick. In the first one, you don't know. And the thing is that our brain changes how our reactions depending on the context. We generalize. Remember, we think that, I don't know, maybe she's sick, maybe I can be affected for something like that. And that is something that happens. Eh? And that is how our brain, and again, if you have some people around who is not doing nothing, you have to have a very good brain to be the first. So these experiments are, of course, it's not mine, but it's true. These things happen. And we are going to finish with this one.
To help us figure out just how susceptible people are to inattentional blindness. It's similar to a test he's done before using recorded video, but tonight, for the first time, he's trying it out with a live audience.
So thank you all for coming in. We've got the Jabberwockies here, and what we're going to do is have them do a couple of their routines. So here's what we're going to have you do. Anytime one of the Jabberwockies wearing blue,
we are going to do what the people there is going to do. I mean, he's going to explain what we have to do, okay?
steps into either of the spotlights, keep track of that. So if they do this, that's 1. They step out, step back in, that's 2. Does that make sense? Yeah. So why don't they have the Jabberwockies come back out here?
The counting exercise will help focus your attention. Try doing this test along with the audience. Remember, you're keeping track of the number of times the blue Jabberwockies step into the spotlights.
All right, so how many people counted between 15 to 20?
50 to 20, how many?
More than 20? All right. One other question, did anybody see a penguin?
Have you seen a penguin? No? Yes. Good for you.
Oh, what?
And have our penguin friend come back out?
Dan Simons just told the live audience about an extra character in the Jabberwockies' performance they may not have seen.
So you didn't notice that when it went through?
Let's take another look.
You see the penguin now?
For anyone that still missed it, you are not allowed to help.
And this is the last one, okay? The first
Watch
one,
the
you know
image
it.
on your screen closely. We've got a quick question for you about these two squares. True or false? This top one here is a darker gray than the bottom one. Pretty obvious, right? Well, maybe not, because the answer is actually false. Believe it or not, they are exactly the same color. Still don't believe these two squares are the same shade of gray? This man, experimental neuroscientist Bo Lotto, is going to show you why your brain is constantly being fooled by what it sees. We'll take a look at the illusion again. If you want, try holding up one of your hands and block this section of the image. If you're having trouble seeing it, we'll help you out. Crazy, right? Take a look at this object. One glance and you know what it is. But how do you know what it is and where it's positioned in space? Well, let's break it down. The light reflected by this object is converted by your eyes into an electrical signal and is sent down a neurological pathway called the optic nerve to the back of your brain. Starting in this region, called the visual cortex, The image is cross-referenced with memory of past experiences stored throughout your brain as you try to identify the object.
So this means that when we see the ball, we go to our brain and think this is like a basketball, and we are going to make predictions about how this ball usually moves, how heavy it is. Even if nobody is asking that, our brain is giving that solutions for us.
Once it's figured out what it is, your brain has to decide how the object is positioned in space. And one of its most reliable tools is to use shadows. Here's another illusion to show you how that works. Take a look at that basketball again. We're going to put it on the court and move it along a diagonal. Now we're going to add a shadow. It's still moving in the same way, right? Okay, so what if we change the position of the shadow? Do you think we can trick your brain into seeing the ball's motion differently? Does it look like the ball is taking off now?
Your brain is tricking you, and just because the shadow
Let's
is
tweak the
different,
shadow
you think it's
one more time.
moving.
What's the ball doing now? Looks like it's bouncing, right?
So our brain uses our previous experience, all the information that it has previous to nothing, and makes our output. But can we trust our brain? We have to, because we don't have any other tools, but we have to be aware that our brains is not always in the truth, and that we have, in my opinion, two big problems. The first one is the focus. And sometimes you have to believe me that you are not the one who selects the focus. Sometimes the news, the TikTok or whatever are focusing you, not you are choosing the focus. And the second one is the prediction to the future. With our experience, that is very different, we usually create predictions for good and for bad. Okay? So I hope you find this talk interesting, and now we can have some questions if you have it. So,
watch the image on your screen.
What do you think? You can trust your brain or not? No, not always. Not always and not 100%. But because I have shown you some of the ways, of the moments that you can trust, there are a lot. But you, during the day, you make many decisions that you have to trust in your brain.
You said earlier in the beginning of the presentation that in order to play the piano, we have to develop our brain. But what happens to those people who are like prodigies playing the piano? I mean, their brain is overdeveloped during pregnancy or what?
Sorry? What happened?
To those people who are prodigies that play the piano very well when they are like very little, what has happened to the brains of the person?
Yeah, if I get the question is, what happened if you have a good practice with piano and then you have many years that you don't play the piano? What happened?
No.
No, I don't catch the question.
For example, when you are very little,
yeah.
And without playing the piano before, you play the piano very well, without practicing earlier. What has happened to the brain?
Well, of course, there is always some brains that, because we have, like, I don't know, our brain has two sides, left and right, and in the left side of the brain, we have some functions, and in the right side, we have other functions. And there are some people who have very, very potential for some activities. This, for example, I'm going to to do something different. Blind people use the visual cortex for sensitive in the hands or for something different. So there are people who are more prepared for certain activities. But even those who has this capacity has to practice a lot to be very good. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
More questions? Ahí.
There are some bad habits that can lead that you stop developing your brain.
Yeah. For example, if you don't have rest enough, for example, the brain needs to be, in order to work properly, needs to have everything between, for example, if you have high levels of glucose, that's bad for the brain, but if you have low levels of glucose, it's also bad for the brain. And the brain only use for energy, it only use glucose. So if you are doing a diet without glucose, your brain is going to work bad. The sleep, of course, the use of toxics. If you are having alcohol, your brain is not even work bad during that period of the alcohol intake. It's also going to work bad for long periods. And that's for sure. Rest, toxics, and minerals, glucose, and so. But if you say to a baby how good you are, that brain is going to be good. But you have to do it for every day during years. And if you said how bad you are, that brain is not going to be good. And I can show you many of the experiments. For example, there is a very nice experiment where a lady who haven't been playing basketball, he tried to score the ball into the basket, and I think in 10 times, he never introduced the ball in the basket. He put a blind in the eyes, and there is people who say, oh, and he threw the ball, and he said, good, very good, you have scored it, you have scored it, you have scored it. Then take out the blinds, and he scored the balls. And do the opposite. There is a basket player who, from 10 balls, it scored 9. They put the blind and say, oh no, you haven't scored, you haven't scored, you haven't scored. And after that, from 10, it scored 3. So self-confidence is very important for the brain work. Okay, so we have finished. I hope you have enjoyed, and hopefully some of you will be interested in neuroscience, because we need brains for neuroscience.